How's it going, everyone? Chris Cornaros here, the cryptocurrent team, bringing you another episode of Crypto Decrypted. And today we're talking proof of work, one of the most common consensus mechanisms and the algorithm kind of driving the security of the blockchain network.
Crypto Decrypted.
All right, now before we dive into the meat and potatoes of today's video, I do want to remind y'all that if this is your first time coming to the channel, how about you go and hit that subscribe button for me, as well as ring that bell so you get notified whenever we have new content up on our channel. And of course, if you enjoyed today's video, how about you leave a like? It really would help us out here. Now, let's dive right on into consensus, proof of work. First up, what is proof of work? So, proof of work is a decentralized consensus mechanism that requires members of a network to expend effort solving an arbitrary mathematical puzzle, which prevents anybody from gaming the system. Now, proof of work is widely used in cryptocurrency mining, which will validate transactions and results in the mining of new tokens. Now, I just covered what proof of work actually is. Now you may be wondering how it works. Again, in the most simple way, proof of work requires a computer to randomly engage in hashing functions until it arrives at an output with the correct minimum amount of leading zeros. In case y'all don't know, a hash is essentially the transaction ID stored on a blockchain. Now, I'm going to give you an example here, and bear with me because it can be a little dense, but I'll try and break it down and explain it in a little simpler terms after. So, for example, let's just say the hash for block number 660,000 is mined December 4th, 2020, and its hash is this incredibly long string of numbers and letters that starts with a lot of zeros. The block reward for that hash successfully completing is going to be, let's say, 6.25 Bitcoin. Now, that block will always contain 745 transactions involving just over 1,666 Bitcoins, as well as the header of the previous block. Now, I hope you're starting to understand blockchain here, right? So again, it's those new transactions chained on to that previous block, hence where the block header comes in. Now, if somebody tried to change a transaction amount by even a millionth of a Bitcoin, or one Satoshi as it's commonly known, the resulting hash would be unrecognizable and the network would reject that fraud attempt. Now, again, that may have been a little confusing. It was definitely very wordy. So I'll try to break it down in the most basic way I can. So remember this. There were a Bitcoin block will always contain 745 transactions involving just over, let's call it 1,600 Bitcoin to keep the numbers easy to remember. So let's say that there is a new transaction that completes a block. The hash for that block, let's call it number 660,000, is going to be mined at a certain time. Now, if that hash is correct, all the transactions line up, then the previous block header will be stacked on top of that new hash, or that new block. The hash is really just the ID for that block, and that's going to verify all of the transactions within that block are correct and not fraudulent. And so essentially what proof of work is doing here is it forces a computer to go back and verify all of those transactions. And as a result, the first computer to verify all of those transactions is going to be the winner here, and it will receive the reward. And in this case, that was 6.25 Bitcoin. Just for reference, that Bitcoin reward level is much lower now than it used to be. But I hope that makes sense, okay? Think of it this way. If everything checks out, then you get Bitcoin. The previous, head of the previous block then gets stacked on to that new block, and everything is good. And that's how proof of work actually functions as a process. And thanks for bearing with me there in that bit of a tricky, kind of long-winded explanation. Now you may be wondering why any of this actually matters. Well, due to proof of work, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency transactions can be processed peer-to-peer securely without the need for a third trusted party, because the algorithm, is inherently forcing all of these transactions to be 100% correct. It says, nope, that's fraud, and it denies the the computer from proving essentially the work or the arbitrary mathematical puzzle. That's going to wrap things up today, guys. I know that some of those descriptions were a bit long-winded, so I'll do my best to kind of summarize things here in the conclusion for y'all. Proof of work validates transactions by asking members to expend effort solving an arbitrary puzzle, changing any amount in those transactions. So even a millionth of a Bitcoin in a single transaction would result in an unrecognizable hash, giving ironclad security to decentralized transaction. And there is one thing I do want to leave you with. Quite often you hear about the environmental impact of cryptocurrencies as a whole, but the reality is really only proof of work cryptocurrencies, those that are governed by proof of work, have a large environmental impact because of how many transactions there now are, because of the computing power required. Bitcoin does consume a lot of energy. However, for other consensus mechanisms like proof of stake, which I'll be covering next week, the energy consumption is significantly lower and is seen as a more sustainable path towards consensus in the future. And if you enjoyed today's video, how about you go leave a like on it? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And of course, if you have any questions, because I know today was a bit long-winded, then you can leave a comment down below in the comment section. But until next Thursday, guys, I'm Chris Cornars of the Cryptocurrent team, and I hope y'all are staying cryptocurrent.